Hello, today is Friday, November 17th, and welcome to episode 277 of Fault Lines, the National Security Institute's podcast that gets you quickly up to speed 3 times a week on the national security and foreign policy debates shaking up America. I'm NSI founder and executive director Jamil Jaffer, and I'm joined today by NSI senior fellows Lester Munson and Morgan Venia. So today, folks, we're going to be talking about China, and Panda. So President Xi and President Biden met in San Francisco. They had a what they called a productive conversation. Chinese leader President Xi Jinping was feted by all manner of American executives, technology executives from major companies. Had a $40,000 a plate dinner with President Xi, and apparently the two presidents agreed that China would send 3 pandas to the National Zoo to replace the ones that left more recently. But more important than that, perhaps, than the pandas, even, I know it's hard to believe that something more important than pandas, the two leaders agreed that China would work to cut off the supply of fentanyl precursors and pill presses to the United States. They had previously cut off the supply of created fentanyl, or already ready-to-go fentanyl, but that obviously hadn't been effective, and so there's this new agreement. In addition, they agreed to resume military-to-military communications that had been cut off in the aftermath of Speaker Nancy Pelosi's visit to Taiwan. But there remain challenges in the relationship. China continues to send all manner of fighter jets and warplanes into Taiwanese airspace and territorial waters. They're moving the goalposts on Taiwan, saying the U.S. now needs to support reunification. And, of course, IP theft and forced IP transfers and the like continue, and China continues to press down on American companies, including Micron Technologies and a variety of other companies that were involved in the audit space as well. So we have a real problem with China. It looks like the president wants a reset. Les, what do you think?
C minus, Jamil Jaffer.
C-. Oh, we're giving grades. I don't realize we're giving grades today.
I decided to give grades today.
Right.
I give them the lowest passing grade because they this summit was not without some value. I think the military-to-military communications is probably the bare minimum of things that could have been achieved. I don't believe the Chinese promises on fentanyl until we actually see some results. They've made promises like this in the past, and it hasn't turned out very well. And the big issues were not discussed, as you pointed out: Taiwan, China's treatment of its other neighbors in the region, China's treatment of its own people in Xinjiang and Tibet. The behavior of the Chinese economy is terrible right now. Xi Jinping is looking for more investment from the outside to kind of bolster his prospects. He didn't make any concessions in that regard. China continues to be a very difficult place to do business. They arrest international business people. There's IP theft. There's all kinds of issues inside China on rule of law that are a big problem for the business community. None of these things were addressed. We did the bare minimum. President Biden calling Xi Jinping a dictator, totally off script. You could read that in Tony Blinken's face. He lost his poker face there at the end. He needs to be a better diplomat. Tony, come on, man. We know you can do this. Be focused, disciplined. You can't do that on camera, man. But the dictator remark, it's a little bit of an insult and maybe not the right thing for the president to say, but it's not wrong either. And the administration needs to be articulating a tougher line on Chinese behavior, things that our allies can rally around and that we can push China to do better. That would be a good outcome from a summit like this. I don't think we're going to see it right now.
I don't think you're right, Lester. Why can't you say he's a dictator? First of all, it was a response to a question. It was either yes or no. If he had said no, everyone would accuse him of lying. If he says yes, which he did, then he's being mean. I mean, President Xi Jinping.
I'll tell you why. It's just rude. We're hosting Xi Jinping. He's in our country. There are good manners. That was probably not good manners, and I'm being generous here with the Chinese. I know, but you shouldn't do that. What you ought to be able to do is articulate the things that you are concerned about in Xi Jinping's behavior without being reduced to name calling. President Biden, frankly, needs to do a better job of being president.
Look, I don't agree. Morgan, I mean, you worked for Nikki Haley at USUN, right? I mean, we know that she wears heels as weapons. I mean, would she have called President Xi? I'm sure she would have had no problem calling President Xi a dictator. Is Les right? What do you think?
Les, I'll note the lowest passing grade is actually a D minus, so that's what I'll give.
Not in my classroom, Morgan.
Well, I will give President Biden a D minus here. There were a lot of things on the agenda. 2, I think, I would say 3 are notable standouts. The only reason Biden doesn't get an F is because we got the pandas back, right? That's
Panda.
Saving the summit. But in all seriousness, look, Biden is acutely aware of the fact that 60% of Americans view China as a threat. We have an election coming up in a year, and calling Xi a dictator, there's nothing wrong with that, right? I think he knows where the American public is on this, and a yes or no question, he's going to say yes, right? It's no brainer.
I mean, he's a dictator, right? Right, Morgan?
Of course, of course. I mean, Les, come on, give me a break here. I mean,
I'm not saying you're. Hold on. I'm not saying he's not a. I'm not saying he's not a dictator. He is a dictator. That doesn't mean you have to say that in public.
So the second point here is that the other thing that was on the agenda was fentanyl. Right. This has been a major topic of the campaign, the primary campaign so far. Nikki Haley in particular has raised it a number of times. And I think it is in this administration's political interest to actually do something about it. Whether or not this is more than a fig leaf, I think is yet to be determined. And so moving forward, I think that this is truly a space to watch, and whether or not the Biden administration will be able to make progress on this. When it comes to the mill-to-mill communication, it's low-hanging fruit. This should have been corrected a long time ago. So I don't really think that this is particularly newsworthy, but nevertheless, it has been dubbed as progress.
I do want to talk about this economic issue that Les raised, though, Morgan. So, Secretary of Commerce Gina Raimondo was sent along with a whole another group of U.S. senior diplomats and senior U.S. government officials to China to sort of set this thing up. It's almost the Biden apology tour. He was tougher earlier in the administration on China when it came to semiconductors and semiconductor equipment and the like. So we have this apology tour, but Secretary Raimondo goes, and what appears to have been an unscripted remark, also says to the Chinese leadership that China's becoming uninvestable. Do we think that's right? Because on one hand, Secretary Raimondo says it's becoming uninvestable. On the other hand, you have, a ton of U.S. senior executives, BlackRock, Steven Schwarzman, I mean, you name it, and they're all sitting there, Apple, Tim Cook, sitting there having a $40,000 plate dinner with the Chinese leader. And he got a standing ovation. I mean, what's the deal? Morgan?
Look, I mean, I think this is clearly a priority for Xi. Xi wants access to American markets. The U.S. business community has clearly a strong interest in maintaining those ties to China. And look, the Biden administration made a deal, right? I think we should be monitoring those conversations very closely and discouraging the business community from making any stupid decisions.
Yeah, you watch The Hill really closely. Do we think The Hill is interested at all in U.S. companies doing business in China and or tech transfer? Because it doesn't seem like they are. They seem to be getting more and more aggressive. We saw the China Select Committee Chairman Mike Gallagher put out materials on exactly who was there at that dinner. I mean, does this even make sense?
There's definitely some naming and shaming going on, Jamil. That's what you're referring to. I think that applies to specific sectors of the economy, frankly, high tech and some of these areas that get close to defense capabilities, and that's understandable. And I do think that this weak messaging on the Chinese economy from both Xi Jinping and Joe Biden is giving an opening to hardliners in Congress to say, "Hey, we're not doing enough here. We need to be tougher with Beijing on rule of law issues. We need to be doing more to lock down benefits for our business community and also make sure that we're pulling apart supply chains in the appropriate places." So again, C- for the Biden administration.
All right, folks. Well, there you have it. Pandas, economics, and military communications. The U.S. and China going head to head. That's a wrap. Thanks so much to Devlin Burney, Claude Jennings, and the NSI staff for their help in producing today's episode. Join us again on Monday, November 20th for another episode of Fault Lines, the National Security Institute's podcast that gets you quickly up to speed and gets you smart fast on the national security and foreign policy debates shaking up America. Fault Lines is now on YouTube, so if you want to see our happy faces, check out our channel for a video of today's episode. If you like what you heard or saw, be sure to rate, review, and subscribe. Have a great weekend.